Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We still may have some individuals joining later as we might be transitioning from a packed morning of meetings. So welcome to our second meeting of the Manufacturing Technology Working Group. I'm Jackie Garofano, Chief Technology Officer of the Connecticut Center for Advanced Technology. And if you were joining us last week, you recall Ron Angelo. So I'm stepping in for him and as co-chair of this working group with Constep. So B is also on the line, and I'll be joined by Jeff Orzak of Constep as well. So here we are, our second meeting. I'll go through the agenda. Jeff and I will be driving our conversation today. So I'll pause and let Jeff just formally introduce himself in that way.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jeff Orzak. I run the Industry 4.0 practice at Constep and formerly was responsible or am transitioning from responsibility with our cybersecurity practice.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. So here you can see our agenda. What we want to be able to do is to level set on Industry 4.0. And then thanks to many of you that have participated and contributed to the survey that we had sent out last week, focusing on responses for the i4.0 providers as well as our manufacturers. We'll be reviewing some of those results and then opening up the floor for some moderated discussion. Then we'll talk about next steps. As we initially kicked off, we do want to hold this as a bi-weekly cadence, so we'll expect to convene together every other week. Here we have our team. So as I mentioned, we have i4.0 providers and manufacturers. And with more than 21 folks on this Zoom call, I'm sure we really have critical mass. So it's wonderful to see the participation. So we won't necessarily dig into all of these companies, but if you would tune back into the previous recording, we had an opportunity to hear from our manufacturers, especially about where they are in their Industry 4.0 journey. So this is our critical mass of our working group, and we may also have individuals that will contribute further down the pipeline once we really get underway. As well, this is being live streamed and archived on YouTube, so you can direct any additional parties to the work that we're undertaking. Before I turn the floor over to Jeff, I'll just level set on our overview of Industry 4.0. So the objective that has been set forth upon us is for our working group to create a roadmap or a playbook for Industry 4.0, particularly targeting our small to mid-sized manufacturers here in the state of Connecticut. We have just under a year under our belts to really come together and do this work. So we've shared in our previous meeting what the legislation calls out. There are clearly defined objectives, and we are all coming together as service providers and manufacturers to be able to share in this work. So as an opportunity for us to level set, I will turn the floor over to Jeff, and he will take us through really what Industry 4.0 is for those of you that may not necessarily be too far along in your journey.
Thank you, Jackie. So as Jackie said, we just wanted to start off with a little introduction of Industry 4.0, kind of get everybody on the same page of what's meant, because there are a lot of definitions out there and nothing, certainly nothing that will make it into Merriam and Webster. So a little history. Industry 1.0 was really just a mechanization of production. Industry 2.0 was when mass production came into play in the early 1900s, at the end of the 1800s, early 1900s. Industry 3.0 was the beginning of adding electronics and computerization to the industry, both in understanding how things work with, for example, MRP or ERP systems, and in being able to automate and control equipment a little better. But what really makes Industry 4.0 important is to begin connecting all of that stuff so that we can have a digitally rich environment. Next slide, please. And so just sample Industry 4.0 definition really talks about connecting machines, people, and physical assets into an integrated digital ecosystem. And so that cyber physical connection is what is important to Industry 4.0. How do we connect things digitally across a domain so that we can take better actions based on the data and make actions without human intervention, or more informed decisions with human intervention if necessary. Next slide. And so there's just a representation of that connectedness, both having the automated equipment, but more importantly, connecting it across so that we optimize production and technology and improve productivity. Next slide. And so it's important to recognize that there are many technologies that will go into Industry 4.0, and some of those are technology resources, such as robotics and cobotics and cobots, or additive manufacturing. But really what makes a distinction in Industry 4.0 is connecting those things together. And additive manufacturing is a great example of that. You could, you certainly need to have something digital. That's the basis of additive manufacturing. But what additive gives us is the beginning of the ability to tie engineering with generative design to additive manufacturing and the free creation of a product, and then connecting that to inspection and the digital outcome so that we have a digital train of data connecting that part. Next slide. And so why are we here? The real reason is there are benefits to moving to a more digital manufacturing implementation. There are expectations of productivity increase, labor productivity and engineering, mistake reduction as we move from engineering into production, time to market increases as we do that, potential inventory control cost, and potentially huge benefits in understanding machine efficiency and downtime reduction. Next slide. Thank you. So we also know that there are a lot of challenges for the manufacturers as we move across this, how to choose platforms, how to understand the initial investment they're going to make and how that they're going to understand the return on that. The need for a digital training and culture, what workforce needs are there, cybersecurity to protect the information that's now digital, intellectual property concerns, and then the ability to take that data and do analytics on it, and how we start to redefine transitions of data across departments. And so I think, that's essentially what this group is looking at, is how do we make sure we have the infrastructure in place, the working group, so that we can help companies meet those challenges. And so, and just to share, the slides here were taken from the Manufacturing Extension Partnerships National Network. And so talking a little bit about how we implement those and assess where the company is, make recommendations on technologies that are important, develop business cases, and then implement those cases. And just a little model of a connected digital factory where we go from design to engineering to manufacturing to the customer, and customer feedback. And so that we can use that analytics and that understanding to improve our productivity.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. I think I'll just take a pause and look at our participants. If anyone wants to raise a hand and have any comments or questions before we really dig into a bit more on the services, particularly that CCAT and Concept offer, and then we'll get into more of the focus group discussion coming off of our survey. So I'll just take a pause and a quick scan. Perhaps not.
Jackie.
Okay. Yes.
So this is City Bangalore from Stanley Black & Decker. Nice to be part of the group. Just to pick up on what Jeff was mentioning in his last slide, just want to, given that we've been on this journey for about 3 years, wanted to provide a comment or two supporting and elaborating on a few points, especially the previous slide, the one before that, I think selecting the right technologies, the sequencing of which technologies to start first is really important. One thing we found out is, especially if you start working with data and connecting that to an IoT or whatever data enabling system is, takes a lot of time and effort. It can be quite consuming, whether it's building a business case, building the application on top, then to get it work. And most important, when you make it work, there's not a lot of trust in the data that you're seeing. So it's quite an arduous journey. And so one needs to be prepared for that. So if you just start out with just that, then you might lose the audience in your factories quite quickly. So one of the things we did was, while we were working on some of the harder ones, like what I just described, we also engaged on several short-term benefit type of use cases. One of them being cobots and automation related to cobots. So typically that whole technology has evolved so much, and it can be developed in sometimes weeks, less than a week, in fact. And then the benefits that it produces are very tangible in terms of being able to alleviate productivity, labor issues, as well as be able to drive measured performance impact in terms of the larger inventory and related topics. So that's one. And now video-based technology is another way to immediately drive value, because now you don't have to censor a lot of things. You have cameras that are well set up to immediately engage on a safety issues or a productivity issue, and then you start seeing results based on analytics. So I just wanted to point that out, that taking the time to create a roadmap as part of that, being able to sequence to cover all of what I just said, would be very helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
Anyone else? Eric, I see you have a hand raised.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. That was really a terrific amount of information, very concisely presented. Could you go back to the challenges again, the slide of the challenges? So, and I think what was just stated about, well, I guess what I want to do is just double check from a 30,000 foot level. So we've got challenges identified here, and you and Sudhi just talked about creating a pathway to address those challenges from the perspective of a smaller mid-sized manufacturer, which I think is excellent. And then, am I right in looking at it that as we develop that roadmap, if you will, we also want to identify where manufacturers would go to access those resources, if you will. So we can say, here are the challenges, and here's how a manufacturer ought to do it, which I think is great. And am I correct in thinking then that maybe the third level is to say, what are the resources out there to help manufacturers do that? And sort of where do they go for what kind of thing? Is that kind of where we're heading?
That is where we're heading. And we'll see as we dive into some of the responses from our manufacturers that there's no clear navigation, there's no clear roadmap. So for many of us, we, ad hoc know the resources because we convene and we're, partner agencies. But for those that we're supporting across the ecosystem, it's glaringly obvious that we all need to do a better job in that way. And so providing those resources, where to go, the direction in navigation is going to be certainly an outcome, a well-needed outcome of this working group.
Terrific, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so speaking of service providers for i4.0, CCAT and Constep are co-leading this working group. So Jeff and I thought it would be appropriate to give a little bit of a 30,000 view of what each of our organizations do in support of our manufacturing ecosystem. Particularly for CCAT, we have state and federal funding, but I'll focus mostly on our state funding programs, which offer these things that you see on the screen. So no cost technology demonstration projects, which is important. So as Sudhi had mentioned, cobots, we have one in-house that is mobile that can go out to companies. We could bring it to your shop floor. We could do a demonstration. We have our engineering staff that will be able to, take your challenges, your gaps, work on a solution, and then push that out to you. So a part of the mission of CCAT is to really push out the adoption of technologies, particularly focusing on i4.0, automation, robotics, model-based definition. Additive is certainly a part of our portfolio. So if you, once you get your hands on this slide deck, you could also go to these hyperlinks. So I recall from our last conversation, our first and last conversation, that many of the manufacturers had participated in CCAT's programs, whether it was demonstration project. We also have money for manufacturing. So the voucher programs that you see listed here are matched grants offered to SMMs for i4.0, industrial Internet of Things type technologies, as well as manufacturing. And so it has a bit of a broad sweep, which I haven't included here. But if you go to each of those websites, you'll be able to get more information. And this is not exclusive. So companies are able to apply for both. It's administered on a first come, first served basis. And there is a lot of money that is still available to support our manufacturing ecosystem. In addition to leading with technology, we also have our workforce focus. And so that is encompassing of upskilling with in-person trainings, workshops, webinars. We have, for the last 18 months to probably 2 years, through our programs that focus on i4.0, we've been putting on a lot of workshops for digital technology and the i4.0 space. And then also for those of you that may be needing talent, and I know that really everyone does, CCAT has a few different programs that work to identify talent in our underserved communities and focusing on that 18 to 24-year-old population, individuals that, are digital natives that maybe not necessarily would, consider manufacturing. We know that there's an urgent need to really tap into those populations. And so we have a really strong team that has a long track record of identifying and partnering with employers. So much of what we do is industry-led and employer-led. So again, free at no cost technology demonstrations for a wide variety of i4.0, the matching grant programs that we have, and the workforce component. In addition, as we get further into our conversation, there's mention of SBIR and STTR, so small business innovation research or technology transfer. We also support that. So in my role as CTO at CCAT, I also serve as principal investigator, and companies both in Connecticut and from afar reach out to us to partner with them to support their technology needs for applying to proposals phase 1, 2, or beyond. So that's a little snippet of CCAT. In the survey that we asked our i4.0 service providers to include, you'll see at the bottom left-hand side what our services provided. Really, CCAT does all of those in some fashion. So as we are generating the information and data, collecting the resources and communicating, flowing that out, it's going to be really important that our manufacturers that are part of this working group, but also your peers in the industry, are able to know about what services that we offer. So that's a bit about CCAT. Jenna, I see your hand raised. I'll pause to take your question or statement.
Yeah, just a quick question. In terms of the application for a lot of these programs, is there a subset of key criteria that you would qualify for this support? So I know we've got a lot of the small and medium-sized focus here. Is that the same for these programs?
Yes, it is. So not necessarily Collins Aerospace as Collins proper, but those within your supply chain having probably 300 employees or less. I think for many of these programs, that's the barrier to entry.
Perfect. Thank you.
Jackie, just curious, in terms of I love the innovation voucher program. Can you give us a sense of how many companies are availing of that opportunity currently?
Probably several dozen, I think. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but this has been in place for some time. And I know that there's even backlog in these requests. So there's a lot of companies that, you know, are even thinking outside of the box of how they could bring in, you know, services, software, hardware into their shops to be able to support the innovativeness of their manufacturing. So Paul Strebel, who is on the CCAT team, really oversees and works with Colin Cooper and the leaders within the state of Connecticut. There's a steering committee that sort of drives and oversees this process. So I could certainly, you know, follow up with some more information just to give some hindsight, but there's, you know, millions of dollars here that are available and still a lot left on the table. And it's not CCAT's, it's for the manufacturing ecosystem. Great. Okay, so I'll turn the floor back over to Jeff and he could share a little bit about Concept and their services.
Thank you. So in the sense of helping customers across all of our activities with assessing and planning, education and training, implementing and sustaining their improvements, that's the model I chose to reflect what we do. So in assessing and planning, Concept offers right and readiness assessments for Industry 4.0, as well as being one of the few Smart Industry Readiness Index certified assessing groups. And I know Stanley has done that too. And so real strong presence in Connecticut for using that model. Educate and train, webinars and blogs supporting advanced manufacturing technologies. Implement, we have technology scouting, technology-driven market intelligence, and offer project management support for implementations. And most important, sustaining is helping companies to build business process improvement and compliance support to make these changes stick. As I mentioned earlier, we have our cybersecurity practice as part of that. So really being there for a holistic approach to helping companies. And if there's no questions on that, we can move on to the survey section.
Just, I guess I would have the same question. Is it the same criteria in terms of partnerships and qualification, 300 employees or less?
So we have no specific qualifications. We certainly drive our marketing and approach to serving small and medium-sized manufacturers. And the NEST MEP mandate is about helping that part of the supply chain, but we are not limited to that. So we certainly could help a company of any size and have certainly done that to partner with companies, you know, both to help themselves in their supply chains.
Thank you.
All right. So I did not include any data on the provider survey. I think that the information that it highlighted was essentially what we already knew. First of all, there are several participants in this group that we've put under provider that aren't really providers, the Chamber of Commerce, so and CMC, more as supporting elements. And then secondly, the other big thing that we knew is that there are some of the larger organizations that will have multifaceted answers, and that will be something we'll have to figure out when we get to understanding how they support us. But in the manufacturing survey, this is a quick overview. So we actually got a fairly good response rate and a quick overview of those resources companies are taking advantage of. So you can see that CCAT and Concept have some awareness that they offer Industry 4.0 services, followed up with State of Connecticut, but actually a large group had not used any of these resources. And so, you know, that is important information for us to kind of identify. And two of these look the same. I guess it was clear on the survey, but not clear here. I broke off state universities and I broke off community colleges. So two manufacturers had used state universities and one had used community colleges. Next slide. And so just capturing whether there was awareness of all those groups being able to support Industry 4.0, and you can see that 28% of the manufacturers weren't even aware that those groups were supporting Industry 4.0 implementations. And then the next slide shows a few comments of those people and talking about how, and I think why we have this working group, that there really is a need for better understanding of what's available, how to connect it, and how to understand the services that are available. And you can clearly read these more carefully when we distribute the package. And we do want to start to have some conversation around this, so please feel free to join in, and we'll leave some time for that. One of the charges of the group is to look at SBIR, STTR usage, and so understanding what was was for the manufacturers on the team. You can see that 0% of the manufacturers have taken advantage of those programs. A few commented that they were outside their size scope, so that's certainly one thing. But even those who had taken or were aware of the programs but hadn't taken advantage, the real difficulty was understanding the complexity of the programs and navigating through the system. And so identifying how we can utilize the resources to connect companies with SBIR better, I think will be something we'll want to look at.
Jessica, I was just about to call on you, since CT Next and CI really drive the SBIR, STTR, so please take the floor.
Well-timed hand raise, thank you. I'm actually really glad that you did bring this slide up, given that it is something that's of paramount importance to us across the state of Connecticut, and CT Next and Connecticut Innovations, for all intents and purposes, is housed most concentrated efforts at the state level for SBIR and STTR, but we're aware that we need to do more of it. And so just wanted to draw attention, for the purposes of this group, a lot of the companies that we would otherwise service are typically small businesses. So absolutely, some of the manufacturing firms that we're talking about here would probably lie outside of what we would typically see as our dense concentration of companies to support via most of our work. But we want to continue to do more. And so in partnership actually with CCAT, with the SBDC, with PTAC, as a core group to start from, and what we would ideally like to see grow, we are going to be convening wherever possible, starting at the end of October, groups together to do a true deep dive discussion to kick things off specific to this effort. We have found, I think, collectively across the state of Connecticut, that there's a lot of work being done on SBIR and STTR to make sure that the state of Connecticut is getting as big a piece of that pie as possible. But a lot of the collisions, if you will, are sort of by accident or just ad hoc. Is maybe a better way to say it. And we don't want to do that. We want to be very intentful. And so there's recent attention that we are putting to this initiative. Getting everybody around the same table to level set on what we're each doing to this effort is key to get us started. And we do expect to see more from there. So I want to put that on the radar, that the conversations are starting even as early as next month to do that level set exercise. And we do expect to do more and have some legislative planning even that's mandated of us to do just that. And so we will be presenting with our colleagues at DECD to the legislature. I believe it's January 1st is even when that plan is due, to make sure that we really are coordinated in this effort. So I hate to see the number 0 there. It breaks my heart very, very much so, recognizing that everybody that would have filled out this survey would be within our sweet spot. But I am very keyed up and encouraged to know that looking at the logos, even on this slide alone, there's going to be more to that effort. So Jackie, with the sort of collective blessing of even this working group, I think we will absolutely do more to leverage this network and bringing more into that conversation as those meetings do start to progress to this effort very specifically.
Thanks, Jessica. Before I open up to the floor to Pamir, I just want to acknowledge that this working group is focused on small to medium-sized businesses. So 75 employees or less, 150 employees or less. So And then we also have partners with Stanley Black & Decker and Collins and Medtronic as well. So they're certainly don't qualify for the SMMs, but you know, as we want to be able to do is share resources and awareness and provide some navigation and direction. So UConn is listed on this slide, and I know that Premier would like to be able to share some thoughts too.
Sure. Something to what Jessica said. We love to support what CTNext is doing. So, in collaboration with CTNext, we have established a weekly, office here at UConn, so that CTNext can come in and educate companies that we work together, and also the faculty, the small business, programs that our faculty are running, so that they're all aware of what the federal government offers in terms of SBIRs and SCTRs. It's a nice collaboration with CTNext, and I do hope that we can bring in all the resources of UConn Tech Park, School of Engineering, and the School of Business as we build up more and more of these SBIR, SCTR programs. Some of these activities will be on our newsletter, which I think everybody on this call receives, but you'll see more and more of these as we build it up together with CTNext.
Great, thank you for that. So Jeff has gone through really the high points and a bit of the low points about what we've heard from our manufacturers. So we wanted to be able to open up the floor for a more focused discussion, hearing some questions, concerns, thoughts on where we take this next. So just to give you a little insight into what we're thinking, we have a charter to create this roadmap in this playbook. We have very specific deliverables that have been mandated by the legislation. Most of that is really corralling our i4.0 service providers and creating that clear roadmap and heat map of who does what and how manufacturers can tie in. As well, then we also have a value stream mapping event where we're going to further identify gaps, challenges, opportunities, and then recommendations. So, thinking about, yes, I completed my survey. We are reviewing that, but because we're only convening biweekly, wanted to be able to open up the floor additionally to thoughts and reactions on what you've heard so far, and providing us with some of your thoughts on how you believe that we would be of most value, particularly to our manufacturers that are on the call. So I'll take a pause and open up the floor for some discussion, or turn to Jeff if he wants to have some further thoughts as well.
No, I think that's fine. Maybe Jackie, you could go back to the slide with the different providers yep, that one. Or the first one, yep. Just so we could have conversation about how people have used those providers, what they see the gaps are, and what has gone well and hasn't gone well, as a beginning of a way to shape where the value stream mapping will take place.
I can speak to one way that we've used Concept, for example, and something that I think is necessary before people get too far ahead of themselves. But we've looked at specific processes, and I think that some people feel that some i4.0 technology is going to be a silver bullet. Like if you have a process that's not working, it's like, oh, it's just get a robot and it's going to fix it. But we really have to understand the process first. And that comes with acquiring and analyzing data. And I think that that's a really big challenge. And it's something that Concept has helped us before, is to look at a process and acquire that data and analyze it. And I think that's something that this group should be able to focus on, is teaching companies how to access data, how to look at the data, how to make sure that the data is clean data, and then how to analyze it. And then from there, they can decide individually what technologies would be the best for them and what would help the most. So that's my opinion on some of that, and there's a few other providers here that we've worked with a lot, CCAT obviously, and UConn, to work on some of these projects. And for those of you who haven't worked with UConn or CCAT, they're incredibly insightful, incredibly helpful, and they have a need to help us as manufacturers. For them to exist, to be successful, they have to make sure that they're helping us and that we're successful as manufacturers. So I would encourage folks to reach out and use as many resources as they can. That's all.
So that highlights the question that was just put in the chat. So I'd like you to continue and maybe elaborate a little further on, especially how you used UConn and any other potential colleges or universities, and so that information can be shared across the group.
Sure. Yeah. So for UConn, for example, we've had, I think, a really great relationship with them for a few years. One specific project that we worked on that we got a joint grant on is we're an injection mold builder and injection molder, and we were working on a way, we make aluminum inserts for our molds, and we want to be able to reduce cost to our customer, and we do a lot of shorter run. So one of the things we wanted to do is to be able to use additive manufacturing to make inserts rather than aluminum. And so we worked with Premier and some of his team to design and to print and to test these molds. And this was a couple of years ago before COVID. So we were able to go out to UConn. Premier and his team came out to us, and it was a really collaborative project that we were able to get some good insight on and share back and forth. And I don't know if Premier, if you want to speak anything to that project, but for us, it was incredibly valuable. And it wasn't the outcome that was valuable. It was the journey, and it was the process of learning and working together and sharing insights that I think was more valuable than anything that came out of it at the end.
So if I may add a couple of things, Charles, thanks so much. We always enjoyed working with WebCo, and a lot of the things that we do as a part of UConn Tech Park initiative, as well as the School of Engineering resources that we have, is we do a lot of proof of concept type of work for small and medium-sized companies. We do a lot of feasibility type of work, going out and assessing the technologies that they may have, and also providing guidance in terms of modernization of the instrumentation that they have, of the processes that they have. This is in addition to educating a significant amount of the workforce that goes into your plants in Connecticut. Approximately 50% of engineers currently existing in Connecticut's workforce have been educated by UConn. So workforce development and also professional educational opportunities with UConn supplement with everything that we do with small and medium-sized businesses. And thank you so much for highlighting our work, Charles.
Thank you both. I apologize in advance, but Kala came.
Exactly
please.
right.
Okay, thank you. Please,
my name's Kala Finkiel. I'm from MDI. We are a small converter of critical cleaning wipers. So think of like the dry Lysol wipes. That's what we do. So I think a lot of the things that when I hear of these programs, I think this doesn't apply to me, right? I'm not sexy. I'm not doing injection molding, and I'm not doing these things. We have a lot of high-speed equipment. We're constantly investing in our business. The things that I need, I certainly need a robot to palletize later, but what I need right now are these like unsexy things, like keeping up with the pace of change from our ERP system, right? Like Horston, we use the same ERP program, and they are constantly pushing out these new features. And you need to have like 3 different IT people. We are always under 50 people. I have one IT guy who runs all of our email, and he's got to figure out what the new mobile handheld devices are. With the speed of obsolescence from a lot of these devices, you're constantly trying to keep up with that and understand what's going on. So from my perspective, it's hard to see where my needs from the business align with your programs. And it might just be that I don't understand all the different programs, but from a really small manufacturer who's not doing biomed, who's not doing anything in the aerospace, it doesn't seem like there's that they overlap with us.
Thank you for sharing that. I think my thoughts on that is, it's uniformly translational, right? Technology adoption can be used, whatever industry, whatever sexy or not sexy things that you're manufacturing. So we'll take that as an action item to, as we go through these conversations and provide resources to be able to, give you more of the lay of the land. And I think what I would love to see, and I think my colleagues would as well, right? Just the continuation of conversation, connecting those dots. So if Charles is hearing what you're saying and he's like, hey, I could help you, right? We just pick up the phone. We're just, kind of building this critical mass amongst each other, and then passing that down and disseminating that and sharing that across our peer base. So thank you for that. Brian, I know that you had your hand up, and then Jessica, and then Eric. So in that order, please.
Sure, no problem. This is Brian Montanari at Habco Industries. We're in Glastonbury. We're aerospace aftermarket manufacturing, so ground support equipment and tooling. And we've got a few different projects we've worked on internally, whether it's from semi-automated welding of some of our products to using mixed reality to stencil some of our products, and also some air quality monitors that are linked to our HVAC system. But I think from the perspective of this working group, especially when we look at some of the data that was presented from the survey, manufacturers, we don't necessarily know all of the different providers that are out there and who's best to go to for what. I think what we tend to do is we tend to go to who we have relationships with, who we already know. So I'm very familiar with CCAT, so we use CCAT. I'm very familiar with Concept, so we use Concept, but I don't necessarily know, for what project I'm working on, whether I should be going to UConn or somebody else. And I think that's a big piece for this working group to look at, is how do we guide the manufacturers in the state to say, okay, all right, I want somebody to come in and evaluate, similar to what Jeff talked about from a Concept perspective, to say, all right, I've got opportunities, but I don't know what they are. Come give me an analysis, versus I've got this project, and I want to, reduce my cycle times or whatever it is. We just don't know where to go. And if we can help guide and direct through this working group to say, okay, the central point is, you go to, for example, what worked really well with CCAT was we contacted CCAT, and Nasir and his group went and looked at all the different providers and came back to us with the technology options. It made my life very easy to determine which direction to go. And I think that's a big piece for this group, is how do we make this simple for the manufacturers and for our target market to know where to go for what.
Absolutely. Jessica, for the sake of time, I'm just going to continue to move through the conversation because I see many more hands being raised and we have less than 15 minutes. So if Jessica, you were going to not piggyback or not, I don't know necessarily if we were just going to go off on tangents here, but I'd like to be able to honor first hands raised. So Jessica, please go ahead.
Absolutely. And I'll be very brief because I was actually going to respond to Charles's comment about universities, and Pamir sort of did touch on it anyway as an example. So I think that sort of point is made. A number of the things that we would otherwise be able to help doing, Industry 4.0 is not really, it touches a number of things that we're servicing via CT Next. And so those connections via the university, we funded, for instance, grants to small companies to be able to utilize facilities at UConn at a reduced cost to the manufacturer in some cases. So there's a lot of those little niche programs that I was only going to stress as an example. When a time and place presents itself, I'd happily talk through some other opportunities related to talent being sourced from those colleges and universities that we additionally support. Since I've heard, Kala, I know you sort of refer to that in some capacity and a couple others. I won't take the time to do it today, but I do think you're tapping into something really essential there, Mike, in sort of that university connection as a resource. And obviously not one size fits all, but a few different touch points that I think would bear further conversation. And I'll sort of pass it forward. Pamir again spoke to most of it from there.
Thanks. I know I was going to call on Eric, and then maybe B, I'll turn it over to you, and then we have several others. So we'll take a pause after that. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I guess in a similar light, we don't need to discuss it today, but one aspect of this I think is important is not only about the money that these entities get to do certain programs, but what are their means of outreach? So for example, I know a small company down in southeastern Connecticut, the only reason they got involved with this is I think Pamir's group or a program that he administers got some money for actual outreach. And they actually went to the company and were looking around and said, geez, we think we can help you. So if it had been up to the company, they never would have made the call. They never would have searched the web. So I think part of this going forward, and maybe down the road, Pamir could, or someone at UConn could inform us on how that all worked. But that's a component of this that I think needs to be explored too. Thank you.
So
Thanks.
very quickly, Jackie, and just as in agreement with what I'm hearing, because this has been consistent. So for those of you that don't know, I just joined ComStat in November, but before that, I was with the ECD. And what I hear consistently is that there are resources, but nobody knows where they are, correct? And that will be financial resources, technical resources, anything. So programmatic resources, academia, etc. What we've been trying to do in working a little bit since in the last month, but what we need a lot, we still have to do a lot of work on is entities like CCAT and ComStat that touch the customer directly, that spend the time at the customer. We are working to really become a trusted advisor. So just so you know, for example, ComStat has 5 regional managers and they are geographic. And we're working really hard to get them to be a trusted advisor beyond what ComStat provides. So basically that they're at the customer. And when you talk about the reach, Eric, obviously we do have focus on generating leads. And we're trying to get a culture of when I'm at a customer, I'm talking about what is your need, not about we provide lean, which is 2 different things. We are known, for example, as the lean people, but our thought is to really get us to be the solution for you. So here we are, we're talking about your needs. What are your needs? So I need workers. Okay, so then I need to connect you with the work group. Or I need innovation, technology. I need to connect you with CCAT. Now, part of the challenge is that we all need to work as provided on educating ourselves on the capabilities of others. And so part of the challenge is a lot of my guys have not been to the University of Connecticut yet to see what they got. And part of the work we're trying to do together to get us there is to really provide that knowledge base so they can be ambassadors for everyone, for CTNext, because we all have limited resources. And given that we do have people in the field doing this work, is part of what we want to do. So I just wanted to bring that up. But it's a challenge. It's going to take a little while.
Great. Thank you, B. So in the order of Jill, Mike, and Mark, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thanks, Jackie. I missed the first meeting, so I apologize, but I just wanted to really quickly share my experience and then piggyback on some of the other comments. So I'm CEO of Bead Industries, Jill Mayer, and we're in Milford. We have under 50 employees, and we manufacture custom electronic contact pins. Our journey was like backwards in many respects. We had issues with data, so we were looking at Power BI and we were using automation for sort of spot solutions. And then fairly recently, we were able to do the Siri assessment with Stanley Black & Decker and Concept, and is the assessment of where you need to go. So you're looking at it from more of a holistic view. And then now we're working with CCAT on model-based definition. We're just embarking on that. And I guess my point is that we initially kind of were just reactive, and now we've done a full assessment, and now we have a plan. And some of that plan basically pointed out that we have issues with our horizontal integration and issues with our shop floor connectivity, which then allows for shop floor intelligence. So rather than just going after shop floor intelligence and trying to pull data, or basically blood from a stone, trying to pull data out of systems that are disconnected is kind of what we've discovered. And now we're working step by step to do that. And so I guess I'm piggybacking on what Charles was talking about with data and what Calla was talking about with ERP. We're really finding that until our systems are connected, there's not a lot we can do to acquire new technology and different equipment if we can't even connect what we currently have to start. So I guess I just wanted to share that, and that's it.
I'm Mike Rochlow with PTA Plastics. We're not dissimilar to WEPCO. We're a tool builder and plastic injection molder, and also contract manufacturer with mechanical assemblies. I wanted to, I don't know if it's diverge, but bring up a little bit different point. As we look for this working group to create engagement with small and mid-sized manufacturers, a hot button that every group that I participate with is workforce related. If we can use workforce as the hook into Industry 4.0, which may lead to automation, which may lead down the pathway of augmented reality, or I heard the term mixed reality, which can be a training tool to be used during onboarding. It can be used to facilitate certain functions. If we can, perhaps evaluate whether we put sort of workforce needs, and the exit ramp out of workforce needs is into i4.0 tools, that may be a way to hit an immediate problem that everybody has, allow an interaction with the resources, and then, maybe as Jill put it, as Charles put it, as others put it, allow that to broaden out. But the hook is related to solutions for workforce training, workforce upskilling. We're going to have needs, as one of my needs that's developing on workforce is automation technicians, automation engineers. That wasn't on our radar necessarily 2 years ago, but as I can't find people. It's difficult to retain people. So we have a team focusing on automated processes. And as I do that, I need talent to support it. So it's a training path that leads into i4.0 technologies, and it's a deployment of i4.0 technologies as a means to address workforce was the thought I wanted to bring out. So I don't know if we have a ramp in that direction, if it makes sense or not, but putting it out on the table.
Thank you for that, Mike. Just a time check, we have 5 minutes left. I don't have a hard stop, and neither does our leadership team here. So for those of you that need to drop, thank you in advance, and we'll continue on here. So Mark and then Hisham.
I just wanted to build on points that Jill and Mike both made, that this I4.0 umbrella is really a broad term for a very large toolbox of technological tools. And they all address different issues. I think what needs to be understood is what are the desired results, and then you pick the tool for the job rather than trying to apply it broad brush. And I think we consider ourselves a provider, actually more of a provider than a manufacturer. We build highly automated systems, and now we're gathering data and providing edge computing on the sides of our equipment. So we're playing in a part of this toolbox. But I think for small manufacturers, knowing, okay, what's the issue you're trying to solve, and okay, for that issue, you'd want to use these one or two tools, and here's the providers for that particular tool, or a couple of providers, rather than looking at here's all the providers and go to town. We consider ourselves experts in automation. We're not experts in digital twin or whatever. So I think we really have to understand the utilization of the tools and the different tools in the toolbox and what problems they can solve. So just some identification of that, maybe breaking down those pillars. I'm assuming we may do that in subgroups, but I guess that's all I wanted to say.
I guess it's my turn. Hi, Mike. I see your the issue is like who to go to. This has been an issue forever. I would advise you, if you identify a problem or you think there is a problem you want a solution for. I think the university, I would reach out to the dean of the college. Just look up who is the dean at X university and call them. They will put you in touch with the right person. There are, I can say, at least 20 companies. We are doing small research for them, especially small companies. We do the research for them for free through our senior project or through our graduate research. They sponsor it. Sponsoring it means they advise, working with the students, and we immediately sign an NDA. The minute you start talking to somebody, we sign an NDA, and it's your property. We do not claim anything. Sometimes they come in with a specific problem, and we work on that specific problem. It could go up to faculty research, which is advanced research. We are, all the university doing a lot of advanced research in different areas. Take automation, take robotics, take data security. So what I'm saying, I think if you think you have a problem and you would like to see a solution, reach out to somebody. And there is no fee for that. People will talk with you. It could be a small project, could be large project. Big companies reach out, and we do have, I mentioned last time, we have a great training program with Pratt & Whitney on manufacturing metrology. So it has been in the state, been in this place for 26 years. I always hear it, who do you reach out to? So pick up the Dean of Engineering in that college if you don't know who, and they will put you in touch. At UConn, they will put you in touch with Pamir or at Central or at Hartford or New Haven, and we will work with you to see what type of work you have. And in any area, if we do not have the right people, we will reach out to our partners, CCAT and CT Next, to work with them. Maybe they have, but at least we will be able to help. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Sudi, I see that you have your hand raised. I know we're at the top of the hour, so closing remarks from you, sir, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, quick question, actually. So when we opened this meeting, the end goal is to create a playbook. So my question is, when do we start creating a template for this playbook? Obviously, getting this feedback like today is critical, but I just want us to be cognizant of the fact that at some point we should start thinking about what the template looks like, therefore trying to answer all the questions that came out today. So it's a question and a suggestion, I guess.
Right. Yes, of course. And that's a good segue to really how we're going to be mobilizing moving forward. So our leadership team here of Constep and CCAT and Senator Hartley and team, we're going to be convening, brainstorming. This is a great listening session. We have data from the manufacturers and the providers. We want to be able to divide and conquer the work. So we'll be identifying work streams and assigning participation in action teams. So when we continue to convene, the hope is that we all still come together, utilize this time. We might be breaking out into groups if the Zoom capability allows, in addition to some offline work. So the next time that we see each other, we'll have a semblance of a plan in place, and we'll be able to get thoughts and feedback. And certainly if there's any immediate reactions or thoughts or guidance, we're here to listen as well. So with that being said, I think we'll close this forum for today. Thank you all so much for the conversation and your participation. Certainly more to come. There is a shared folder that you all should have access to that will be putting documentation. But as we've heard, picking up the phone and calling people. So I think hopefully we'll start opening lines of communication as we all, are hearing new things from our colleagues here. So we will see you all again on Wednesday, September 19th at the same time, 11 to 12, and hold that biweekly cadence. If you have any thoughts, questions, concerns, reactions, you're welcome to reach out to Constep or CCAT. We'd welcome your input. So much more to come. Thank you all so much again for your time.
Thank you.